Imposter syndrome, the echo of self-doubt in the halls of accomplishment, but confidence and belief get louder with each step forward. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Leaders Realm podcast. I'm your host, Tony Camerata, serial entrepreneur, business owner, business coach, personal mindset coach, sales trainer, but most importantly, a friend. In the Leaders Realm, we're building a team of titans, all while activating a beast mode mindset. Each week, guys, we're building a mental toughness, building our belief in ourselves, becoming stronger in our faith, and building leaders for tomorrow. Last week, we wrapped up an eight-week series on activating a beast mode mindset, all the factors involved in that, steps that we can take to achieve that. I hope that you take the time to go back, review some of that stuff. Great information. I enjoyed putting that podcast together, that series, and I really enjoyed the feedback that I received. So thank you all. So this week, I'm going to start the episode this week with just a few questions to you. Have you ever felt like a fraud? Like no matter how much you achieve, someone's going to look at you and they're going to make you out to be an imposter. Although you have the qualifications, never good enough for the position, title, task, or even another person. Do you hear the echo of self-doubt in the halls of accomplishment? Well, guys, you're not alone. Imposter syndrome affects people from all walks of life, ages, races, and religions. So what exactly is imposter syndrome? How do we overcome it? Well, sit back, guys, grab that coffee, and let's figure this one out together. So guys, I chose this topic this week for a couple of reasons. I had a listener ask about the topic, and it's a subject that really interests me a ton. And the reason being is I have a very strong tendency of struggling with imposter syndrome every day. You see, imposter syndrome, it's a psychological pattern. It's not a pathology. It's a pattern where individuals doubt their accomplishments and they have a persistent fear of being exposed as a fraud or even unqualified. Despite all the evidence of their competence, those of us that have imposter syndrome, we often believe that we don't deserve our success. We're not worthy of it. Well, in doing some research, I found that the phenomenon was actually first identified in 1978. Two psychologists, Pauline Clance and Suzanne Imes, they initially focused, and this is interesting, they initially focused their study on high-achieving women, but later found that imposter syndrome is widespread across all demographics. In fact, they say that over 70% of people today are experiencing imposter syndrome at one level or another. What I found very interesting and surprising while I was beginning to dig was the people that I've discovered that have this syndrome. I'll talk about a handful of them here in a little while. But for now, let's just dive deeper into the psychology behind imposter syndrome. Why do so many of us feel like frauds? What are the underlying causes? How do we get over it? How do we overcome it? So there's several factors that contribute to imposter syndrome. One of the major ones is the pressure to achieve perfection at all times. In our society, there's often an expectation to excel in every area of life, whether it's academics, career, personal endeavors, athletics. It's a standard that can create so much pressure on us that it leads us to feel that we can never, ever measure up. Another factor, this is a big one too, it's the comparison trap. So with the rise of all these social media platforms, it's so easy. It's so much easier today than it was, years ago. Years ago, we never really paid attention. Now with technology at our hands constantly, it's so easy for us to compare ourselves to others. We see the highlight reels of all their lives and their vacations, their achievements, And by doing that, we start to internally bash ourselves, and it makes us feel inadequate, and it amplifies our self-doubt. So the third one, it's me pretty close to home here. Family dynamics also play a huge role. So many of us who experience imposter syndrome, we grew up in families where success was highly valued, mistakes were not easily forgiven. And this creates a fear of failure and a constant need to seek approval. Now, myself, I definitely fall into factor number 3. How about you? Is it the comparison trap, the family dynamics? I mean, these are things to really start digging deep, guys, and thinking about, reflecting on your lives and trying to figure out where this is coming from. Just a little bit more about me. As I said, I'm going to continue to share stories with you guys, and hopefully week after week you get to know me a little bit better. This is definitely not the Tony story time, but it's definitely a way for us to work together to achieve some of the things that we think that are just impossible to achieve. I come from a family of immigrant parents. Neither one of my parents were educated past, 10th grade, I think. No, not even. I'm first generation American. And what's interesting is that not only was I the first born, the first male, there was an expectation on me. There was an expectation that till this day I look back and I could never achieve. One of my biggest accomplishments, I remember, I graduated high school. It's really not a big deal. Everybody graduates high school these days, right? But for me, English was a second language for me. I had an English tutor until I was in second grade. I struggled with writing and reading. So when I graduated, it was a huge thing. It was a huge thing for me internally. I wanted to celebrate that success. Struggled through school. And I remember going to someone very close to me, and I said, I did it. Now, you see, the other thing I didn't mention was that not only was I the firstborn, but the first male, but I was also the first to graduate high school out of my family, my immediate family, my cousins, all of that. And the response I got was, big deal. What are you going to do next? Talk about blowing the wind out of your sails. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about relationships with people a little bit later in the episode. Another story that comes to mind is, I remember I was playing soccer actually with a very small middle school. We were in middle school. The team, we were like the Bad News Bears of soccer. We went out there, had a great time, but man, we just could not win a game. And the school itself had never won a game in the history of the soccer team. And, we get ourselves into a battle out there one afternoon, and we managed to win a game. We win the game 3-2. But what was interesting is that I managed to score all 3 goals. By the grace of God, somehow, some way, I was right there, and I'm going to do it. Here comes imposter syndrome. I was at the right place at the right time. See, these are the kind of things that we tell ourselves. Had nothing to do with the skill, had nothing to do with the drive, had nothing to do with the burning desire to win a game, but I was at the right place at the right time. See, and that's just kind of ingrained in me and something I'm trying to overcome. And I'm sure a lot of you are in the same boat with me. But what happened next was worse. Now, the school itself, everyone was excited. The newspapers were there. They were interviewing me. It was like it was a historical moment for our school. It was a great time. And I remember on the ride home, I was reminded about the shots that I missed. I was reminded that I did get a yellow card. I was reminded that I didn't kick the ball exactly textbook style. So again, guys, I share these stories with you to let you know that I'm human. I'm just like you. And these are things that we carry with ourselves, and we don't realize because we bury them so deep in our subconscious that we just bury it and we internalize it so deeply. And yet every time we try to achieve something, that inner voice of self-doubt just comes out. So, for myself, I carry this into my adult life. Creating lies, not feeling worthy, never feeling good enough. Then you've got the other side of the coin. You've got folks out there that they just can't say no to anyone. And the reason is that they're always in a position where they need to please everyone. Why? When you get into that situation, it's simply because we're not feeling worthy, not worthy of success, worthy of normal relationships even. So it wasn't until recently, guys, I started to dig into this. I heard the term imposter syndrome. I'm like, man, what is that? It was nothing I was imagining. But it wasn't until recently that I've learned to really understand and identify the reason behind the years of the self-sabotage, the self-doubt, how it's hindered me from succeeding in certain areas, professionally, personally. So yeah, I'm hoping that we can really dive deep enough here. I'm trying to keep the podcast without getting too awfully long. There's a lot to cover here. So that, the next step is to just study the syndrome, the symptoms, how to get out of this mindset. And guys, that's really what it's about. It's a mindset. It's not a disease. It's a mindset. And what I've learned throughout the years is that we can change our mindset. And I'm hoping that over the past 8 weeks, you realize yourself that, hey, I can activate that beast mode mindset. I don't have to keep stinking thinking, as some people I know would call it. So I stress this week after week, the importance of celebrating your small victories and treating failures and setbacks as learning tools and fuel to push you forward. I do this because as I continue to study imposter syndrome, the visual I keep coming up with is that we're so quick to externalize our successes, but yet we internalize our failures. When we internalize, guys, when we internalize these negative thoughts, these negative things, these negative actions, they continue to play out in our minds over and over. And all that does is that continues to fuel that self-doubt. So you end up with more self-doubt. And ultimately, what does that lead? It leads us straight to another failure. And then what do? We internalize that one. And the cycle just continues and continues. However, when we externalize something, it happens. Awesome. Great. Yoo-hoo. Wahoo. That's awesome. Amazing. You know what? Let's move on. Why do we keep doing this to ourselves? And I'll tell you that identifying your root cause is extremely critical in this. If you can't get to that root cause, you can't reverse the mindset. You can't shift the mindset to where it needs to be. So let's just go over quickly some symptoms that will help you identify whether or not you're really struggling with imposter syndrome. So, here's one: chronic self-doubt. Feeling like you're never good enough, regardless of your accomplishments, and always seeking the approval of others. Hey, I got a great idea. What do you think? Constantly people-pleasing. Another one is attributing success to external factors. Believing that your success is due to luck, timing, or other external factors, rather than your own abilities. And I covered that when I was talking about that game. The fear of being exposed. Constantly worrying that others will discover that you're not as competent as they think you are. Let me say that again. Constantly worrying that others will discover that you're not as competent as they think you are. And that fear just overcomes us. Next is downplaying your achievements, minimizing or even sometimes dismissing the accomplishments that we make as insignificant or just plain old unworthy. Perfectionism, setting impossibly high standards for yourself and feeling like a failure when you don't meet them. I mentioned earlier that I was really surprised to find some well-known and famous people that struggle with imposter syndrome. And as you guys know, I've mentioned it several times. I'm very strong in my faith. I spend a lot of time in prayer. I study scripture. So when I started to wrestle with the whole concept of imposter syndrome, I was really interested to see what the Bible had to say about it. And although it's not directly addressed in the Bible, there are several biblical characters who experience feelings and situations that resemble the imposter syndrome. So I pulled a few of them out. The first one that popped out at me was Moses. When God called Moses to lead the Israelites out of Egypt, Moses felt inadequate and he doubted his abilities. And we know this because in Exodus 3:11, Moses said to God, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" Well, God reassures Moses, promising to be with him and providing signs and assistance throughout the way. Another is Jeremiah. Jeremiah felt inadequate. When God called him to be a prophet, he's like, "Hey, I'm too young, and I don't have the speaking ability to do this." So in verse Jeremiah 1:6, "Alas, sovereign Lord, I do not know how to speak. I'm too young." And God's response was a response of encouragement to Jeremiah, saying that he would put his words into Jeremiah's mouth and protect him. Paul, he was once a persecutor of Christians. Before his dramatic conversion, he was one of the biggest persecutors out there. So by doing that, and when he converted, he often reflected on his past, and he felt so unworthy of the role of an apostle. And in Corinthians, we read, "For I am the least of the apostles, and I don't even deserve to be called an apostle, because I persecuted the church of God." But despite his past, Paul became one of the most influential apostles, showing how God's great grace can transform and use anyone for his purpose. Anyone, guys. That's me. That's you. Anyone. Timothy. Timothy was a young leader in the early church. He struggled with the feelings of inadequacy. He was always timid. In 1 Timothy 4:12, it tells us, "Don't let anyone look down on you because you're young. Set an example for the believers in speech, in conduct, in love, in faith, and in purity." Paul encouraged Timothy to be confident in his calling, rely on his faith, and showing that mentorship and support can help overcome self-doubt. So my question here is imposter syndrome stopping you from following your calling, guys? Stopping you from being obedient to God? I know now it's surely stopped me many times in my life. So these stories highlight the feelings of inadequacy and self-doubt. They're not new. Even great biblical figures face them. The consistent message, though, is that reliance on God and recognizing his grace and trusting in his purpose can help us to overcome these feelings. Here's some more names you may be familiar with. Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein, one of the greatest physicists of all time, reportedly felt like an imposter. He once said, "The exaggerated esteem in which my life work is held makes me very ill at ease. I feel compelled to think of myself as an involuntary swindler." How about that? Tom Hanks. Despite his numerous awards and successful career, Tom Hanks has admitted to feeling like a fraud. He said, "No matter what we've done, there comes a point where you think, how did I get here? When are they going to discover that I am in fact a fraud and take everything away from me?" Wow. Serena Williams, one of the greatest tennis players of all time. Despite being one of the greatest, Serena has admitted to feeling like she doesn't belong. She said, "I have imposter syndrome all the time. I feel like, what am I doing here? They're going to find me out." Simone Biles, what an amazing athlete. Highly decorated gymnast. She's spoken openly about her mental health struggles, including feeling like an imposter. She said, "Sometimes I feel like I'm not deserving or good enough to be at this level." Guys, the list goes on and on. Point is, we're not alone. We're not alone with these feelings. So we now know the main factors that contribute to imposter syndrome. We know what the symptoms are. We also know that very successful and famous people that struggle as well. So how do we change this mindset? How do we overcome it? Well, the first step, guys, is to acknowledge and accept what you're feeling. It's important to recognize that what you're experiencing is common. It doesn't reflect your actual abilities. This, again, is a time where we need to be brutally honest with ourselves, guys. No sugarcoating it. Lay it all out there for yourself and start identifying. Talk about it. Share your feelings with trusted friends, mentors, your accountability partner. You'll likely find that others that in your circle have similar experiences, which can be incredibly validating and also helpful. You know, how are you dealing with it? How are you overcoming this? Start keeping records. Record your accomplishments, guys. Create a journal. List your achievements, both big and small. Review it regularly. It can be a constant reminder of what your capabilities truly are. And by doing that, all that's going to end up doing is just boosting your confidence, guys. And just like with everything else, confidence is a key element. Challenge negative thoughts. When self-doubt begins to creep in, identify that it's creeping in and counter it with evidence of your past successes and skills. One of the great lessons that I learned in Craig Groeschel's book, Winning the War in Your Mind, is when I begin to tell myself a lie, to find a verse in scripture that counters that lie. Replace the negative thoughts with positive affirmations. Set realistic and achievable goals, guys. We talk about goals every week. Break your goals down into manageable steps, micro goals, and celebrate your progress along the way. This also helps us to build confidence. It helps us to recognize the achievement. Begin to accept your success, no matter how small you think it may be, and begin to internalize that feeling. This next one's pretty tough, guys. Begin to evaluate your relationships. We have a tendency to surround ourselves with people that will continue to support the narrative of imposter syndrome. The hard part is sometimes the very same people we deem the closest to us or love the most are the people that continuously keep us from breaking out of this mindset. Just a couple of things that pop into my mind. You know, several years ago, I purchased a franchise. It was a growing franchise here in the U.S. So naturally, with a brand new franchise growing, they needed to put together a franchise advisory council. And the CEO of the company nominated me, and my peers, other franchise owners, voted on the people that were nominated, and I got elected on the franchise advisory council. I was pretty excited about that because I was told that I was nominated because of my experience in the financial technology space and my sales experience and my people skills. I was excited about it. So I shared that with someone who was very close to me. And what I heard was, well, don't get too excited. They did that to stroke your ego. Talk about a knife in the heart. You know, or another time I remember in recent years, actually, I had developed a product, and within the financial payment space, I had a video created out of slides and images, and it was time to do a voiceover. So the friend of mine that helped me with the video said, hey, you need to do the voiceover. And once again, this person that was very close to me said to me, well, why would you do the voiceover? You don't have the kind of voice that people want to listen to. And what's ironic about that is here we are a few years later, and I'm doing a podcast that seems like it's exploding week after week. You talk about God having a sense of humor, right? So you see, guys, we have to be brutally honest. We have to look at all of the factors. And yes, we have to make some changes. And some of those changes are going to be hard. You know, if you have one of these people in your life, you know, maybe you ask this person something, I don't know, something like this. Hey, you know, I've been working towards this goal, whatever that goal is for you, whether it's, you know, weight loss or a new business or expanding your business, whatever the case may be. Would you mind showing some support? And what I mean by that is, even if I fail, will you please not call out my failure? And please don't make it a reminder. If this person truly loves you and cares about you, they'll do all that they can to make sure that they help lift you up when you fail and not ridicule you. The worst feeling in the world, guys, is when someone you love and respect tells you that you're not qualified. I mean, within reason, right? Of course. I mean, we're not going to wake up tomorrow and say, hey, I'm going to be an astronaut next week. That's a little ridiculous, right? So I'm talking about within reason. I think you kind of get where I'm going with this. So lastly, guys, let's talk about the importance of self-compassion. This is such a hard one. One of the biggest challenges for us that struggle with imposter syndrome is the harshest self-criticism you can imagine. We often hold ourselves to a higher standard than we do others, constantly beating ourselves up for perceived shortcomings. And notice I said perceived. Practice self-compassion. Practicing self-compassion involves treating yourself with the same kindness and understanding that you would offer to a friend. Acknowledge your feelings, guys. Remind yourself that it's okay to make mistakes. Recognize your worth beyond your achievements. If, like me, you struggle alongside me with imposter syndrome, I encourage you guys, try some of these strategies. Remember, overcoming imposter syndrome, it's a journey. It's not a destination. It takes time. It takes patience, lots of self-compassion, and knowing that you're not alone in this. And you, yes, you deserve to recognize and celebrate your achievements. So before we wrap up today's episode, I want to leave you with just a few additional resources that can help you on the journey. There's plenty of books out there, articles, online communities that are all dedicated to this topic. I encourage you to seek out the resources, put in the effort, and make the changes you deserve. So as I wrap, guys, I just want to remind you, you are capable and deserving of your success. Imposter syndrome is a common struggle. It's one that we can overcome with the right strategies, the right support. But remember, be patient with yourself. Celebrate your achievements, no matter how small you may think they are. I really hope that today's episode has given you valuable insights and tips for overcoming the imposter syndrome. Remember, you're not alone, and you deserve to succeed. I want to leave you with one final thought before we go. Imposter syndrome, guys, although it may never completely disappear, with the right mindset and tools, we can manage it, and we can continue to grow, and most importantly, we can succeed. Embrace your unique journey. It's yours, guys. Embrace it. Love it. Celebrate your accomplishments. And remember that you are enough, just as you are. And I value each and every one of you. Until next week, guys, this is Tony Camerata. And remember, stay fast, stay fluid, stay flexible, and be the absolute best that you can be.